The SOS no one expected the signal came in the middle of the night. At Earth's deep space listening post, far beyond the orbit of Pluto, a lone communications officer named Harris sat with his eyes half closed. The room was silent except for the soft hum of machines. It had been weeks since any unusual message passed through. Then the static changed. A sudden burst of sharp noise made Harris jolt upright. His screens flickered, and a long string of alien symbols scrolled across the display. The computer could not translate it at first. The sound kept repeating, broken words, heavy breathing, and something that sounded like explosions in the coal. Background. He leaned closer. Among the alien words, one phrase was suddenly clear in English. Help, please. Help. Harris felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He pressed the record button and ran the emergency scan. The signal was coming from far outside human-controlled space, a sector known for being quiet and unimportant. But the tone of the message was different. It wasn't a normal distress call. It sounded like pure fear. He sent it to Earth Command. With the highest priority code, in the war room of the United Earth Fleet headquarters, Admiral Jonathan Rourke listened to the message 3 times. His eyes narrowed each time the translation system filled in more words. Destroyed. No one left. Enemy coming. Deathworlders, you are last hope. The term Deathworlders made the room go silent. Humans had heard the name before. It was what other alien species called them. A warning, a nickname, born from the fact that Earth was a dangerous, harsh planet, and its people even more so. But no one had ever used it in a plea for help. Around the table, members of the Galactic Council appeared as shimmering holograms. Tall, elegant figures with eyes like glass. This call was not for humans, one of them said sharply. You will ignore it. Another added, interference in this conflict will bring danger to your world. The enemy they speak of is beyond you. Rourke didn't answer right away. He stared at the holographic map, the location of the call pulsing like a heartbeat in a dark corner of space. You're saying we should pretend we didn't hear it? Rourke asked, his voice calm. Yes, the council leader replied, for your safety and for ours. When the holograms faded, the room was quiet again. Only the officers of Earth remained. They're lying, said Captain Vega, one of Rourke's most trusted commanders. If the enemy is so dangerous, why aren't they moving to help? Because they're afraid, Rourke replied. Afraid it will be their turn next. He played the recording again. Behind the aliens. Panicked voice, he heard something strange. The sound of metal tearing, a deep roar like a collapsing mountain, and something else. A steady rhythm, almost like footsteps echoing in a huge hall. Rourke's decision was made. Within hours, orders spread across every fleet base on Earth and its colonies. Prepare for war. Massive hangar doors opened on the Moon, Mars, and orbital stations. Warships, some as long as cities, floated from their docks. Railgun batteries were loaded. Starfighter squadrons ran last checks on their engines. Alien merchants in Earth's ports froze as news spread across the galactic trade network. The humans are moving a fleet. In the markets of Orion Station, alien traders stopped mid-sentence. On the luxury moons of the Alien Empire, political leaders exchanged fearful glances. The humans had never moved this many ships at once, not since the Solar War 50 years ago. At the Fleet Command Tower in New London, Rourke walked into a control room. The huge glass window showed dozens of ships rising through the clouds. Their hulls gleamed silver in the sunlight, each one marked with the flag of Earth, a blue and green sphere with a ring of stars around it. Harris, the communications officer, who first heard the message, stood nearby. He had been flown in directly from the outer post. Sir, Harris said quietly, I don't know if they really meant to call us, but they sounded like they were dying. Rourke looked at the endless, line of warships on the horizon. Then it's simple. We go. The fleet's engines lit up, brighter than suns. The sound was like rolling thunder, even in the thin air of the upper atmosphere from orbit. The view was breathtaking. Over 100 warships, from small destroyers to massive carriers, forming a formation that stretched for miles. On the bridge of the flagship Atlas, Rourke stood at the center console. Course locked, the helmsman reported. Destination, Varen system. The enemy's territory. Rourke nodded once. Jump. The stars stretched into lines. The fleet vanished into the dark far away. In the ruins of a dying world, a shadow moved across the sky. In the command ship of the enemy, a tall figure watched the sensors. Deathworlders have entered the field, the alien commander said in a low, satisfied tone. Good, let them come. The Deathworlders mobilized, the fleet had jumped, but the true storm had only begun. News of Earth's movement spread across the galaxy faster than light. On dozens of alien worlds, leaders whispered behind closed doors. On space stations, merchants closed their shops early, not wanting to be present when Deathworlders went to war. In the far corners of the galaxy, there was an old saying, when? Earth's fleets move, entire star systems shake. On board the Atlas, Admiral Rourke stood in the strategy room, a giant holographic display glowing before him. The image showed the Varen system, a world that had once been green and full of life. Now the latest scans painted it in shades of black and red. Captain Vega entered, holding a datapad. Sir, the fleet is fully armed. We have 2 carriers, 15 battleships, 30 destroyers, and over 100 smaller escort vessels. All systems green. Good, Rourke replied, his eyes fixed on the map. We'll need every gun. Harris, still wearing his communications badge, stepped forward. Sir, the alien voice from the SOS? We've traced it. It came from the capital city of Vera Prime, or what's left of it. Out in the hangars, crews worked like a swarm of ants. Engineers checked missile bays, tightened armor plates, and tested railgun power coils. Fighter pilots ran final simulations. Their faces pale but determined. The Atlas's main deck vibrated under the weight of war machines being loaded, artillery mechs, heavy drones, and cargo containers filled with supplies for survivors, if there were any left. Across the fleet, soldiers were quiet. No one joked. They all knew the stories about the enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations without warning. No one had ever defeated them. In the mess hall of the Atlas, a group of younger crew members sat together. One of them, a tall woman named Kaya, glanced at her friends. Do you think we can win? She asked. A veteran gunner named Cole looked up from his ration pack. We're Deathworlders, he said simply. We don't win by being stronger. We win by refusing to lose. The table went silent. They all understood. As the Atlas cut through hyperspace, the rest of the fleet followed in perfect formation. From the outside, it looked like a river of steel flowing through the void. In alien space, hidden sensors picked up the movement. Transmissions raced toward unknown locations. In dark rooms, enemy warlords watched the human fleet's progress. Come, one of them hissed. We will test them. Back on the Atlas, Rourke received a report from the scout ship Horizon. Sir, our path to Varen system is clear, but there's movement on the edges of our route. Multiple signatures. Could be cloaked ships. Rourke's jaw tightened. They're watching us. Let them watch. Hours later, the fleet slowed as they neared the edge of the Varen system. The bridge of the Atlas went silent as the image of the planet filled the main display. Once it had been a jewel in the stars, seas glittering under twin suns, continents covered in emerald forests. Now the oceans boiled with smoke, the land burned black. and the cities were nothing but skeletons of metal and stone. Harris whispered, "My God." Vega scanned the horizon. "Sir, I'm reading survivors. Small life signs in orbit and on the surface." But what?" Rourke asked. "They're not alone." In the darkness beyond the ruined world, a shadow moved. Then another. And another got. The sensors beeped in alarm. Dozens of massive ships sliding into view, their black hulls covered in jagged armor. The enemy had been waiting. The fleet's coms crackled to life with a voice like grinding stone. "Deathworlders. Leave this place or share its grave." Rourke didn't blink. He leaned forward and gave his order. "Battle stations." The ruins of Veyranth enemy ships didn't move. They just floated there, silent, black, and huge, blocking the stars. On the Atlas's bridge, the air felt heavy. The crew waited for Admiral Rourke's command, their hands resting on weapon. "Controls," their eyes fixed on the enemy shapes ahead. "Hold position," Rourke ordered. His voice was calm, but his eyes never left the display. "No one fires unless I say so." The enemy's voice echoed again across the coms. "This system is ours. Your presence is death." Rourke cut the channel. "Vega, send in the scouts. I want eyes on the planet's surface." Within minutes, small recon drones shot forward, slipping past the enemy blockade at impossible speeds. Their cameras streamed, live images to the bridge. The first view as of the capital city. It was gone. What had once been a shining metropolis was now a sea of craters, blackened towers leaning like broken bones. The streets were lined with burned out shells of vehicles. Fires still burned in some places, long after the bombs had fallen. Then the camera moved, and they saw movement. On a cracked rooftop, a group of thin, pale figures waved weakly at the drone. They were Varans, their skin marked with deep burns, their clothes torn and stained. Some clutched children in their arms. "They're alive," Harris breathed. "Not for long if we don't move." Vega replied. The second drone fed in an image from the outskirts of the city. Rows of massive pits had been dug into the ground. Inside them, twisted remains of alien starships lay in pieces, as if they had been thrown there like garbage. But in one pit, the camera caught something worse. Hundreds of Varan bodies. UNMOV.ING.Col. The veteran gunner muttered under his breath. "That's not war. That's slaughter." A third drone's feed showed the far horizon, a jagged fortress of black metal. Enemy banners hung from its towers. Around it, strange machines crawled. Across the landscape, tearing apart what was left of the cities. Vega looked at Rourke. That fortress wasn't there before the invasion. They built it after they took the planet. Rourke's voice was low. "It's their staging ground, and it's coming down." Suddenly, the sensors screamed. Enemy fighters launching from the Black Fortress, dozens of them, heading straight for the drones. The feed turned into static one by one. The last image before the final signal cut was a shadow passing over the camera. A ship so massive it blocked the sun. Back on the Atlas, alarms lit up. "Sir, the enemy fleet is powering weapons." The sensor officer shouted. Rourke didn't hesitate. "All ships forward formation. Protect the survivors. Fighters launch." The hangar bays of the Atlas opened like the jaws of a predator, spewing out wings of human starfighters. Across the fleet, railgun batteries came online, glowing with stored energy. Harris stared at the burning planet on the display and whispered, almost to himself, "They asked for help, and we're the only ones who came." Rourke heard him and answered, his eyes locked on the enemy armada. "Then we'll make them regret touching Varan." The enemy ships began to close in, their massive hulls blotting out the stars. The Atlas's engines roared. The Battle of Varan was about to begin. Asterisk first. Contact with the enemy. The first shot came from them. A beam of red energy ripped through the void, striking one of Earth's Ashkort ships, the Guardian. The ship's shields flared bright, then shattered like glass. Fire bloomed along its side as it spun away, venting debris into space. Guardian is hit. Vega shouted. Rourke's eyes narrowed. Return fire. All batteries. The void lit up. Human railguns fired in perfect rhythm, their slugs moving so fast they tore through enemy shields before the explosions even reached the eye. Missiles streaked forward, their trails burning white against the blackness. The first enemy cruiser split open, molten metal spilling into space. But the rest kept coming, their black holes drinking in the light. They're charging. Cole, the gunner, called from his station. Fast. Enemy fighters swarmed ahead of their capital ships, jagged, insect-like craft weaving through human fire. Starfighters from the Atlas met them head-on, dogfighting in a deadly spiral above the burning planet below. One pilot, Calcine Ghost, dove straight into the swarm, locking on to 3 enemies at once. His missiles struck in rapid bursts, turning the fighters into sparks, but seconds later, his own craft vanished in a flash. On the Atlas, the bridge shook violently as enemy rounds slammed into its forward armor, shields at 60%. The tactical officer reported. Hold the line, Rourke ordered. His voice was ice. Push them back from the survivors. Through the chaos, a channel opened. The enemy commander's face filled the screen. Its skin was black and scaled, its eyes burning like coals. When it spoke, its voice was a low growl. You defend the weak. That makes you weak. When we finish you, Earth will burn. Rourke didn't blink. We've heard that before. And then he cut the transmission. On his signal, the human fleet shifted formation, the Atlas moving to the center while the destroyers formed a spearhead ahead of it. Fire the broadside. Rourke commanded Dot from the Atlas's flanks. An entire wall of railgun slugs and heavy torpedoes erupted. The nearest enemy cruiser was torn apart in seconds, its pieces spinning toward the planets. Atmosphere like falling meteors. Dot. But the enemy was far from beaten. From the far side of the planet, more of their ships emerged. A second wave. The sensors counted them, one by one. 20 more ships inbound, Vega said grimly. And one of them is huge. On the display, the massive silhouette of a super dreadnought appeared, its hull lined with weapons, larger than some human. Ships. The enemy commander's voice returned over an open channel, this time without warning. Deathworlders. Let us show you why your kind dies screaming. The dreadnought's main weapon began to glow. The light spread across its hull, like a rising sun. On the Atlas, Rourke's voice cut through the tension. All ships, prepare for the hardest fight of your lives. The battle above the ashes, the enemy dreadnought fired. A spear of white energy burst from its forward cannon, slicing through the void. It hit the destroyer, Iron Star, dead center. For a moment, the ship's shields flared bright blue, then shattered. The blast punched clean through the hull, tearing the vessel in half. Both sections spun away, burning until they vanished into Viren's atmosphere like falling meteors. No one on the bridge of the Atlas spoke. They didn't need to. The dreadnought had just shown what it could do. Target their main cannon. Rourke ordered. The fleet moved as one. Human battleships banked hard, their massive railguns lining up for a single coordinated strike. Missiles from the carriers streaked toward the dreadnought, cutting through the darkness like glowing arrows. The first barrage slammed into its shields. The impact lit up the dreadnought's surface like a storm. For a second, the light held. Then one section of its armor buckled under the pressure. But the enemy was relentless. From the dreadnought's flanks, hundreds of smaller ships poured out, swarming the human fleet. The battle dissolved into 1,000 separate dogfights. Cole's gun batteries roared as round after round tore through enemy fighters. "Keep 'em coming." He yelled over the comms, sweat running down his face. Below, the surface of Vereenine burned. The glow from the fires lit the underside of the human fleet, giving the battle a hellish red tint in the middle of the chaos. Harris's voice came over the bridge channel. "Admiral, I've picked up a signal from the surface. It's the survivors. They're trapped in the ruins, and enemy dropships are closing in on them." Rourke didn't hesitate. "Send the Falcon Squadron. Protect them at all costs." Through the viewport, Vega saw the fighters break formation, diving toward the burning planet. Their engines left streaks of light as they disappeared into the smoke-filled atmosphere. The dreadnought turned its main cannon again. This time, it aimed directly at the Atlas. "Evasive!" Vega shouted. The flagship banked sharply, the beam missing by only a few kilometers, but the heat from the blast made the bridge glass glow faintly red. Rourke's voice stayed steady. "Get me firing coordinates. I want that gun gone." Opportunity came when a squadron of human bombers swept in low under the dreadnought's hull. They released their payload in perfect sync, heavy torpedoes that burrowed into the armor before detonating. The explosion rocked the giant ship. One of its weapon arrays went dark, and thick black smoke vented into space. Cheers erupted on the Atlas, but Rourke didn't smile. "It's not enough. We take the fight to them." The human fleet surged forward, closing the gap. Battleships opened fire at point-blank range, each hit tearing chunks from the dreadnought's armor. The enemy returned fire with everything. They had plasma bursts, missile salvos, and cutting beams that lit up the void. The battle became a storm. Ships exploded on both sides. The comms were filled with overlapping voices, orders, warnings, last words. In the middle of the chaos, Vega saw something on the display. The dreadnought's main reactor was dangerously exposed after the last volley. "Admiral," she said, "if we hit that core, the whole ship goes." Rourke looked at her for half a second, then nodded. "Signal the Atlas gunners. All power to forward railguns. Fire on my mark." He waited until the dreadnought turned broadside, its core glowing faintly through a torn section of armor. Mark. The Atlas's forward guns roared. 3 massive slugs punched through the gap, each one striking the reactor. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a light brighter than a sunrise erupted from the dreadnought's center, tearing the ship apart. In a single deafening blast, shards of burning metal scattered in every direction. The shockwaves slammed into the human fleet, rattling hulls and flaring shields. The dreadnought was gone, but the victory was not complete, as surviving enemy ships broke formation and began retreating, not in panic, but with a strange, deliberate order. Vega frowned at the tactical display. "Admiral, they're not running. They're regrouping." Rourke's eyes darkened. "Then the real fight hasn't even started." The turning point. The wreckage of the enemy dreadnought still floated in space like a broken moon, its burning fragments drifting into Varen's atmosphere. But there was no time to celebrate. Multiple warp signatures detected. The sensor officer shouted. The tactical display filled with red icons. Not dozens this time, but hundreds. Vega's voice was sharp. "Admiral, they've brought their entire sector fleet." The enemy ships appeared like shadows peeling away from the dark. They surrounded the humans on all sides, their black hulls gleaming faintly in the dying light of the planet below. Cold realization settled over the crew of the Atlas. They were trapped. Rourke didn't waste time. "All ships tighten formation. Protect the survivors' dropships at all costs. We fight our way out." The comms filled with acknowledgments. But everyone knew the odds. This was no longer a battle. It was a siege. The enemy didn't rush. They moved in slowly, like predators closing in, on wounded prey. And then, all at once, they struck. The first wave hit the Atlas from above, a rain of plasma fire that lit up the shields in a blinding glow. Human destroyers swung in to intercept, but several were torn apart before they could return fire. In the middle of the chaos, Harris's voice cracked over the comms. "Sir, the Falcon Squadron reports they've reached the survivors on the surface. But enemy troops are closing fast. They won't hold without cover." Rourke made the call instantly. "Pull the Hammerfall and Orion out of the main fight. Get down. Bear and hold that ground until every survivor is on board." It was the hardest decision of the battle. Pulling ships from the line weakened the human formation, and the enemy saw it. A massive enemy cruiser surged forward, its weapons locking on the Atlas. The flagship's shields screamed under the impact. On the bridge, sparks burst from the tail, sealing as systems overloaded. "Shields at 30%. Cole's voice came through the weapons channel. "Admiral, we can't hold this. Not like this." Rourke's reply was steel. "We will. Because we must." Then came the killing blow. The Vigilance, one of Earth's oldest and most respected battleships, took a direct hit to its core. There was no explosion, just a silent bloom of light as the ship disintegrated in an instant. On the bridge of the Atlas, the crew fell silent. Many had friends on the Vigilance. Rourke's jaw tightened. "We're not done yet." Vega leaned in close. "Sir, I have an idea. Dangerous, maybe fatal. But it could turn this around. Go on." "We?" "Ram their flagship. Take out their command ship, and the rest might scatter." Rourke looked at the tactical display. The enemy flagship was massive, sitting behind the main assault line, directing the attack. His decision came fast. Do it. The Atlas turned toward the enemy flagship, its massive engines flaring brighter than they had all battle. The move was obvious, and the enemy saw it. They sent everything they had to stop the charge. Destroyers blocked the path. The Atlas's railguns tore them apart. Enemy fighters swarmed the hull. Gunners on every deck mowed them down. The final kilometer felt like a lifetime. Rourke's voice echoed across the ship. Race for impact. The Atlas slammed into the enemy flagship's side with the force of a meteor strike. The hulls screamed, metal against metal, as both ships tore into each other. Explosions raced along the enemy vessel's spine. In the final seconds before the blast, Rourke gave his last order. "Evacuate who you can." Rest, stand your ground." The explosion lit the Varan system brighter than its suns. When the light faded, the Atlas was gone. So was the enemy flagship. The surviving enemy ships hesitated, their formation breaking. The human fleet, bloodied but unbroken, seized the moment. They drove the enemy back, ship by ship, until the survivors on Varan were safe aboard. The transports. But the victory was hollow. Without the Atlas, the fleet was weaker. And in the quiet that followed, every human ship picked up the same signal, a new enemy transmission. "You have wounded us, Deathworlders. Now we come for your home." The oath of the Deathworlders. Battlefield was quiet now. Burning wrecks drifted across the Varan sky, their twisted metal glowing faintly against the dark. The human fleet, what was left of it, floated in formation above the ruined planet. Out of the original armada, less than half had survived. Many of those ships were scarred, their hulls blackened, their engines limping, but they had done it. The survivors of Viran were safe, their transports tucked inside the human formation, like children under a shield. In the command chamber of the Resolute, now the acting flagship, Captain Vega stood at the main display, her uniform stained with smoke and blood. Harris was there too, his voice hoarse from hours of relaying orders. No one spoke of the Atlas. No one had to. Admiral Rourke's last order was clear. Vega said finally. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clenched into fists. Protect the weak, hunt those who would harm them, and never wait for permission from cowards. The room was silent. Every officer present had served under Rourke. They knew this was more than an order. It was a promise. Outside, on the open combs, the survivors of Varenne broadcast their thanks. One voice stood out, the elder whose SOS had first reached Earth. Deathworlders, we will carry your name in our songs. You did not just save us. You stood when no one else would. But the moment of peace shattered as a new signal cut through the fleet's channels. The voice was cold, filled with venom. You have cost us much, Deathworlders. Your fleet is weakened. Your defenses will fall. Prepare your world for fire. The transmission ended in static. Vega stared at the flickering display of Earth, a small blue-green sphere in the middle of the stars. She knew what the enemy meant. They weren't retreating in defeat. They were regrouping for a strike at humanity's home. She turned to the officers. Then we meet them head-on. No walls, no hiding. We take the fight to them before they reach Earth. Across the fleet, the message spread, from bridge to hangar, from pilot's seat to gunner's post. Every soldier, every sailor, every pilot made the same silent vow. They would not let Earth burn. In the hangar of the Resolute, mechanics worked tirelessly to patch the ships. Soldiers loaded fresh ammunition. Pilots strapped into their fighters, the smell of fuel and scorched metal thick in the air. The Varenne survivors watched from the observation decks, awe in their eyes. They had never seen a species prepare for war, not out of hunger for conquest, but out of loyalty to those they called allies. On the command deck, Vega stepped forward, her voice carrying across the entire fleet. We are Deathworlders. They think that means we are dangerous because we are strong. They are wrong. It means we are dangerous because we endure. No matter the cost, we endure. The fleet roared in response. One by one, the ships powered up. Engines flared. Shields hummed to life. The black void ahead seemed to ripple with the promise of battle. And then, with a flash of light, the Deathworlders vanished into hyperspace, heading straight for the heart of enemy territory. Far away, deep in enemy space, a council of warlords gathered. At the center of their chamber, a star map glowed, and Earth was marked in blood-red light. One warlord leaned forward, his claws tapping the table. They will come for us? Good. We will be ready. The war was no longer about Varenne. It was about survival. It was about revenge. And humanity had just declared both. Asterisk.